Okay, so recently I've really been into reading the Spider-Man comics. As you guys know, I've caught up on the Zeb Wells run if you've watched my many videos criticizing those last couple of issues, but also I've been looking at reading some of the comic books that I've actually never read before. I have my favorites in the Spider-Man mythos such as Spider-Man Blue. I really like Kraven's Last Hunt. Ultimate Spider-Man is another one of my many favorites, and many others that I have read in my lifetime. But recently I've come to read comic books that I've never actually read before. One, because I'm interested, or two, I've never just gotten around to reading them. And recently, this last week, I have caught up on Spider-Man Renew Your Vows, which is the comic book that sees Mary Jane, also known as Spinneret, team up with Peter Parker and their daughter, Annie-May Parker, who goes by her superhero nickname, Spiderling. This comic is great in many places, and if anything, it's a shame that it got cut short when it did. And as the title of this video suggests, we are going to be going into why this comic book is the perfect modern Spider-Man comic book. But before we get into that, what is Spider-Man Renew Your Vows? If you haven't read this comic book but are still interested in watching the video, just let me give you a quick summary of the book before I make my points. Spider-Man Renew Your Vows is a comic book about Peter Parker, Mary Jane Watson, and of course Annie-May Parker. These three will go on different adventures together as they learn to be a family duo in the crime-fighting business. Mary Jane gains her powers through a secret technology developed by a company called Regent, and it basically means that Peter Parker can share his spider powers with anyone he likes, so he shares them with Mary Jane. And of course Annie is born with her spider powers because she is the daughter of Spider-Man himself. They have highs, they have lows, and they go on many different adventures throughout the book. In a nutshell, the baseline concept of the comic book is just that. But what makes it so great? Let's find out. Before we continue, I want to ask you a question. Do you enjoy watching Spider-Man and MCU content on YouTube? If so, then Lewis Unlimited is for you. With a vastly affordable price, you can get everything from exclusive bonus content, early access to new videos, influence over upcoming videos, and much more. If that sounds appealing by any means, go unlimited today. You won't regret it. Okay, back to the video. The first and most obvious thing that makes this comic book so great is the fact that we have a family dynamic for a Spider-Man story. This is a family dynamic that I have been wanting in a Spider-Man comic book for a long time. So when I finally started reading Renew Your Vows, I realized that this is the story that I have wanted since day one. Something that we don't get in modern Spider-Man media enough, especially in the current run of comic books in the modern 616 era, is a family dynamic between Mary Jane and Peter Parker and their daughter. You see, the main issue with modern Spider-Man comic books, and for those of you who watch my videos frequently will get tired of me repeating myself over and over again, is the fact that, well, they are just too afraid to move Peter Parker on in his life. Like, he's broke, he finds it hard to get a job, he finds it hard to maintain a relationship, and there are many more things that just tie him down to the status quo and baseline Peter Parker that we've known since the 60s. There was at one point in the Spider-Man comic books where Peter Parker and Mary Jane actually got married, and that lasted until One More Day, which ultimately reversed this. Ever since then, fans have been begging Marvel to get Mary Jane and Peter Parker back together. Unfortunately, they have never been further away from actually getting married in the modern comic books. In fact, I'm not even confident how they're actually going to get back together in the modern Zeb Wells run, even if they do at all. So Spider-Man Renew Your Vows was an out for the Spider-Man fans that wanted to see what it would have been like if Mary Jane and Peter Parker ended up staying together. This is an alternate universe in which One More Day never happened. This is the universe we wish we had in the mainline Spider-Man continuity. And the main reason for this is because of the family dynamic between the three main characters. The family dynamic in this comic book is something that we have never seen before between Peter, MJ, and their child. This is what Spider-Man comics should be striving to be, rather than rehashing old stories. Marvel are so afraid of moving Peter on in his life that they feel like they'll alienate their audience because it isn't what they grew up with, and it's not what appeals to younger fans. However, this story couldn't feel more like Spider-Man. They're afraid that maybe if Peter Parker gets a child or if he gets married, that maybe he won't feel like that relatable teenager that we all grew up with. But it's the complete opposite. Peter Parker has never felt more relatable in his life than he does in Renew Your Vows. Peter Parker in Renew Your Vows is literally more Peter Parker than I have ever seen in any of the modern Spider-Man comic books. The family dynamic and adding that into this story perfectly encapsulates what makes this comic book so great. And it's not only great as a comic book and as a story as a whole, it's good for the character of Peter Parker. And it's not like they don't actually ignore his past either. They make sure they include what happened to Peter Parker in his past to influence his present. Like for example, the death of Gwen Stacy is mentioned. Even though Gwen is only name dropped once, Gwen plays a major part of the trauma that built up to Peter's protectiveness over Mary Jane and his daughter in this comic book. A big part of what makes the family dynamic so interesting is that Peter has been used to being the only one to have spider powers for so many years, and he's been the one used to protecting the ones he loves, and he doesn't want to lose anyone else, just as he lost Gwen to the Green Goblin. So then when Mary Jane and his daughter are out on the battlefield, the chances of them getting hurt or worse is at an all-time high, and Peter has to overcome this fear of letting them help him in battle. Not only does the trauma of Gwen, Uncle Ben and other people in Peter's life dying in his past really come into effect in this story here, but the story arc itself builds upon its past, which is what I really like. They're not afraid to stray away from where Spider-Man came from, but also they're not afraid to tell new stories, which is once again what the modern comic books should be doing in the mainline 616 universe. Another common thing, like I mentioned at the start of the video, that they like to do in modern Spider-Man comic books is have Peter be broke pretty much all the time. Peter should not be broke when he's pushing on 30. Peter Parker is a fully grown man, he is really intelligent as we keep getting told, but he can't sustain a job where he can make at least a little bit of money to make his way in New York, which doesn't make any sense to me. Considering he's been Spider-Man for so many years, you would have thought he would have figured it out by now. However, in Renew Your Vows, the Parker money problem isn't even that big of an issue. Yes, it's mentioned a few times, but isn't anywhere near a core part of what makes this story so heartwarmingly Spider-Man. The Parker money problem for so long was what made Spider-Man comic books and Spider-Man stories in general work. It was one of the core elements of every Spider-Man story, and to some extent still is. But in Renew Your Vows, it isn't lingered over at all. Instead, Peter and Mary Jane do have somewhat of a stable income, where they can afford to pay their rent, and they can also pay for their child. Yeah, they have a few ups and downs and bumps in the road, but like I said, the Parker money problem is nowhere near as prevalent as it once was. And yeah, although it isn't exactly where I would have wanted Peter to be at 30 years old, I would have rather have had him be a scientist or some kind of teacher. I would have had him move away from the Bugle, but at least he can have a stable income from the Daily Bugle, and he isn't being ripped off all the time. And Mary Jane has her own business, which is great, which means that they can live comfortably in their apartment without them having many issues. Speaking of Mary Jane, I actually really like how Mary Jane has powers. Now, just a few weeks ago, I said that I wasn't a fan of MJ having powers in the comics. And to a very large extent, I still agree with this. However, the way in which she achieves her powers here is much more sentimental and has a much stronger meaning to the story other than, oh, she has powers now. In this comic book, she has powers to be closer to Peter Parker in the Spider-Man part of his life, so she can feel more connected to him and her daughter as a family. This makes sense, and it's really sweet. This also provides a very good story reason for allowing change without it feeling absurd, random, or done for complete shock factor. There is rhyme and reason for this decision through character, motif, and family. And I cannot stress this enough. If change happens through this character, if change happens through any story, it has to be because of character. It has to make sense. It has to be because of motif. It has to be because of what's happened in their past influencing their upcoming decisions. And this is exactly what is happening here. Mary Jane having powers doesn't undercut Peter Parker. Mary Jane having powers doesn't completely destroy Peter Parker's character. Mary Jane having powers doesn't completely destroy the point of her character or the point of the story or the point of the mythos. Mary Jane having powers in this scenario, fleshing out this existing idea, totally makes sense for story and character reasons. And if this was the main 616 universe and Mary Jane ended up getting spider powers in the similar way that she does in this comic book, I would completely understand it because of the way that it happens. Once again, it's allowing this story, it's allowing these characters to move forward without rehashing old arcs. It's telling a new story, it's doing something new, it's doing something different, but it isn't going out of its way to completely destroy their characters. It isn't going out of its way to completely destroying what any of these characters stand for. They do it in a very niche and beautiful way at the same time. And the last but certainly not least thing that I really enjoy about this run is that they use new characters whilst also keeping the old ones on board. Something that the new comics do that really annoy me is that they hold on to old characters like they can't ever let go. For example, Norman Osborn needs a frickin' break. They overuse Norman Osborn to no end. However, in Renew Your Vows, we get something new and exciting. As ridiculous as Normie Osborn is, who is the son of Harry Osborn if you don't know, he is fundamentally something new and something exciting that we've never actually seen before. We've never seen Harry Osborn's kid, but now we have. And yes, this comic book doesn't shy away from showing us old characters as well. But unlike the 616 universe, these characters have moved on and are different. Betty Brant is older, we get to see how her life has evolved. But we also have old characters that remain the same to keep the world somewhat familiar, like J. Jonah Jameson. It's a perfect balance, it's a perfect mix of what makes this story so great. At the end of the day, and in conclusion, Spider-Man Renew Your Vows is a perfect way for the modern comics to take template from. Although they never will, and I know this will never become a reality, Renew Your Vows would be the perfect modern 616 comic book. It manages to introduce new concepts, introduce new characters, introduce new stories and new dynamics, whilst not undercutting what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. The new stories that Peter Parker has been given in this comic book fully align with what the Spider-Man character stands for, and totally make sense for where the character would be at this point in his life. And that's all I want to see. I want to see Peter Parker grow up, and that's what makes Renew Your Vows so great for me personally. I'm a really big fan of Renew Your Vows, and I'm really glad that I started reading it. If you guys have read Renew Your Vows, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about the comic book. And also make sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoy my Spider-Man commentaries. That would really help me out, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, make sure to subscribe if you do enjoy my videos, and make sure to hit the bell so you do not miss another one as soon as it comes out on the channel. You can be one of the first people to watch the videos. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I have the members club up and it's available now. You can join Lewis Unlimited for a very, very affordable price, and you get many perks such as early access to upcoming videos, you get an exclusive monthly podcast, and sporadic content here and there that is exclusive for the members only. And you also get other perks like priority reply to comments, you get exclusive community posts, exclusive behind the scenes content, etc. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.